I have a major sweet tooth. Dessert is one of my great loves in life. In fact, the only reason I don't eat dessert multiple times every day is because I know that it is not nourishing for my body, not because I don't want it. Last year, my body's ability to regulate my blood sugar changed enough that my doctor told me I was showing prediabetes based on my blood work for the first time ever. I will admit that I was pretty disappointed because I've always wondered if I would have to have a reckoning with sugar someday. And to be honest, that still might happen. But I also realized in that moment that I was experiencing a physiological response to my first year in postmenopause and the most stressful year of my life happening simultaneously. As I figured out how to address the changes that were causing my blood sugar to be elevated, I realized that if it can happen to me, knowing everything that I know about how to manage blood sugar, then it can happen to anyone. Today's video is about how blood sugar dysregulation actually progresses and why midlife is when many women experience elevated blood sugar for the first time. My name is Stephanie Dunn. I'm a registered dietitian and the founder of Feed Your Intention. I guide women to nourish their wellness and reclaim their wholeness. And first, I want to talk to you about why blood sugar regulation matters, because when we know why something matters, we're more likely to do something about it. Number one, elevated blood sugar increases inflammation in the body. It triggers the immune system to being slightly on all the time. Now, strangely, simultaneously, elevated blood sugar as a second point also weakens the immune system, making it harder for the immune system to heal wounds and fight off infections effectively. Number three, blood glucose spikes cause energy crashes and cravings. And number four, too much glucose in the blood damages blood vessels and organs over time, which eventually can lead to nerve damage, vision loss, and kidney failure. And lastly, elevated blood sugar contributes to an unhealthy cholesterol profile, which I've been talking about a lot recently. So check out my video about blood sugar and cholesterol, which is linked right here, if you want to hear more about that. The thing that most women don't understand about blood sugar dysregulation is that it isn't binary. You don't either have healthy blood sugar regulation or diabetes. I mean, you might have healthy blood sugar regulation, which I will call stage 1 of the blood sugar regulation continuum, or you could have blood sugar dysregulation at one of 3 other levels. So let's talk about what this continuum looks like. Well, stage 1, as I said, is healthy blood sugar regulation. In this stage, you eat a meal or a snack and glucose gets into your bloodstream. The pancreas responds by releasing insulin into the body. Now, insulin is like a key, and that key goes to each cell in the body and it kind of unlocks the cell, opening it up so that the blood glucose can flow into the cell. This is normal, healthy blood sugar regulation. You eat a meal, your blood glucose goes up, the pancreas releases insulin, insulin opens the cells, glucose goes into the cells, and your overall blood sugar glucose levels come down relatively quickly within a few hours after you eating. Now, the first step towards blood sugar dysregulation, I'm going to call stage 2, which is insulin resistance. Now, this is when blood sugar dysregulation begins. And what happens is that the cells become less responsive to insulin. So the beginning of it is the same. You eat a meal or a snack, your blood glucose levels go up, the pancreas releases insulin, insulin travels to the cells, but now the cells are resistant to the insulin, meaning that they don't open up right away and allow the blood glucose to go in. So this means that the blood glucose levels are staying just a little bit elevated. The pancreas responds by producing more insulin, sort of in an effort to force the cells to open up and let the blood glucose in. And this actually works for a while. The cells actually do respond to the increased insulin. They open up and they let the blood glucose go in. Now, on your standard lab panel, your blood sugar levels are still going to look normal, particularly if you get your blood drawn when you are fasting. However, your insulin is already starting to run elevated, meaning it is higher than it should optimally be. This stage of blood sugar dysregulation is often completely invisible because we don't routinely do the testing that would allow us to see that the dysregulation has started. Now, if this continues and blood sugar continues to stay elevated, we get to what is known as what I will call stage 3, which is prediabetes. In prediabetes, the blood sugar numbers start running more elevated for more of the time. So the insulin, the extra insulin that is being pumped out by the pancreas, is still able to get most of the blood glucose out of the blood, and into the cells, but it might take longer for this to happen. And what that can mean is that the glucose is staying in the blood a little bit longer than it was before. At this point, your blood sugar starts running higher than normal. And this will particularly be true after you have eaten a meal or a snack. That blood sugar will stay elevated for a longer period of time. Now, at this point, it is still highly reversible with lifestyle interventions if we are receiving the information that we need to know that these changes are necessary and important. Unfortunately, this prediabetes phase is often under-discussed, meaning that your doctor doesn't really go into detail, even if they sort of mention it to you, because it doesn't meet the criteria of a full-blown diabetes diagnosis. So many women, like me, when they get to this pre-diabetes stage, are told that their numbers are just a little bit high and sent home without much meaningful guidance. I mean, for me, I was told to start eating a low-carb diet and to stop having dessert. I mean, yes, I understood what the doctor meant, and in theory, that could have worked or certainly helped, but given the stress that was happening in my life, I'm not actually sure that it would have brought my blood sugar numbers down sufficiently. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Anyway, now we get to stage 4, and that is when a type 2 diabetes diagnosis is given. When we get to this stage 4 of blood sugar dysregulation, the pancreas can no longer compensate for what is happening. There is not enough insulin being produced to get the glucose fully out of the bloodstream, and now the blood glucose levels are staying elevated all the time. And at this point, significant intervention is needed, and it will include diet and lifestyle and probably some form of a pharmaceutical, meaning a medication, in order to bring those blood glucose levels down to where they need to be so that we avoid all of those implications, those unwanted and dangerous outcomes that we talked about a little bit earlier. Once we get to the diabetes stage, it is much, much harder to fully reverse this blood sugar dysregulation than it would have been in earlier stages. Unfortunately, standard blood work misses the early dysregulation. And without the right blood test, you'll not even know that you were in stage 1 at all until you get to stage 2. And this is why. The standard blood work for blood sugar regulation typically tests 2 things: your fasting blood glucose number and your HbA1c. Now, your fasting blood glucose is a snapshot. It literally tells us how much glucose is in your blood at the exact moment that the blood was drawn. It doesn't tell us how much was in your blood yesterday, or for me last year, how much was in my blood after I ate 2 very large slices of cake as part of my stress coping strategies. I have other ones also, but last year was just too much and I had plenty of dessert to help. Now, separate from your fasting blood glucose numbers, there is the HbA1c. And this is your hemoglobin A1c. And it gives us a little bit more information about what happens to your blood sugar levels over time. When glucose floats around in your blood, it comes into contact with the hemoglobin that is in the red blood cells. When it does that, the hemoglobin becomes what is called glycated. And you don't actually need to know technically what that means. The best way for me to describe it is that the glucose kind of sticks to the red blood cell. So the A1C is measuring what percentage of red blood cells specifically have glucose kind of stuck to them. How many of your red blood cells, what percentage have been glycated? Now, red blood cells live for about 3 months, and then the body breaks them down and eliminates them from the body. Of course, it's constantly doing this in pieces. So it's not like all of your red blood cells get broken down at one time and you get all brand new ones. Like there's this constant turnover of red blood cells happening in the body. So this A1C number sort of gives us an average of what your blood glucose levels have been over a 3-month period. During insulin resistance, your fasting blood glucose levels will almost definitely be within normal range. However, your A1C number might be starting to creep up a little bit. Now, it might still be in normal range, but you might be able to see that it is starting to inch up some. However, your fasting insulin levels will be elevated as the pancreas continues to pump out even more insulin than it used to in its effort to keep those blood glucose numbers down, because your body really wants your blood glucose to be within a very specific range to avoid the negative consequences that come when blood glucose is elevated for a long period of time. So if we had that fasting insulin number, we would be able to tell that your body has already started to struggle with blood glucose regulation. So with that fasting insulin number, the fasting blood glucose number, and the HbA1c, we would be able to take all 3 of those numbers and compare them against what is considered optimal, not just normal, and even ideally against what has been your history of these markers over time, so that we would know if changes were actually happening in your body. Now, as women go through midlife and we experience the hormonal transition from perimenopause into postmenopause, our blood sugar regulation actually gets thrown off by multiple factors. The first is declining estrogen, because estrogen supports insulin sensitivity. So as estrogen declines, that support for getting insulin to unlock the cells and let the glucose in, that support declines also. Now, this can happen throughout the perimenopause period of our lives, which can last for up to 10 years before our final menstrual period, and continues into postmenopause, which is typically about another 2 years of hormonal changes after our final menstrual period. The second thing is chronic stress, which we often experience in midlife. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol causes blood sugar levels to go up also. So most women are managing both hormonal changes and stress simultaneously in midlife. The third thing is that the gut microbiome changes in midlife, and that starts to affect our blood sugar regulation also. The fourth thing is sleep disruption, which is a very common side effect of the hormonal changes that we experience in perimenopause. And when our sleep is disrupted, that affects our cortisol, which, as we know, affects our blood sugar, but sleep disruption also affects blood sugar directly. This is why blood sugar regulation can change in midlife even without us making any changes to our diet or our lifestyle. Of course, if you do change your diet or lifestyle, or if your stress levels increase significantly, you could see an even bigger impact to your body's ability to regulate blood sugar, just like I did. Now, as I mentioned, last year I was in my first year of postmenopause and experiencing inordinate amounts of stress, and my blood sugar numbers showed it. I knew what was happening. and why, and I even knew what to do about it, which I am immensely grateful for. And now I want every woman to have that same clarity. Now, what does all of this mean for you practically? Well, prediabetes is not a minor finding. It is a significant signal from your body telling you that something is out of balance. And it may have been out of balance for a very long time, or you may now have multiple factors contributing to the imbalance. When we are in stage 2 of insulin resistance, or even stage 3 of prediabetes, we have the opportunity to make changes that will meaningfully influence our body's ability to regain blood sugar control. You don't have to wait for a diabetes diagnosis or even a pre-diabetes diagnosis to start paying attention to your body's ability to regulate blood sugar. You can ask your doctor to run additional tests, and you can listen to the signals your body is giving you that may indicate if your blood sugar regulation is changing. Maybe your A1C number is creeping up a little bit. Maybe you're experiencing more energy crashes after meals or more cravings. Maybe you're having difficulty losing weight even though you are actively trying to. Or maybe you've got more brain fog than you used to. Now, of course, other than the literal blood sugar numbers themselves, these other symptoms can have root causes other than blood sugar dysregulation. So please consider that before jumping to any conclusions about exactly what's out of balance in your body. And if you're not sure what your specific set of body signals mean, work with a qualified practitioner to help you figure it out. Or you can ask AI, like a lot of people do these days, but then ask a qualified practitioner to validate the information, since AI regularly gets health information wrong. And that's a whole other topic for another video, but I feel like I need to be mentioning it these days. Now, back to the blood sugar regulation. The good news is that we have a lot of control over how much glucose our body has to manage and how our body manages the blood sugar that is there. Research confirms this over and over again, that we have so much control over our blood sugar regulation. Food, movement, sleep, and stress. The same 4 levers that affect cholesterol also affect blood sugar. Now, next week, I'm going deeper into how to achieve blood sugar control, including why carb counting may not be the best approach for you. So if you want to catch that video, be sure that you subscribe, like this video so that you'll be informed whenever the next one comes out. Until then, please know that your body does not need fixing, even if your blood sugar regulation is off. You need nourishment. And understanding the difference between those two things is one of the most empowering things you can do for your long-term health. I wish you wellness and wholeness.